A wealthy businessman in first class humiliates a woman, assuming she's too poor to belong there. But when tragedy strikes at 35,000 feet, the very person he scorned is the only one who can save him. Because Lisa isn't just any passenger. She's one of the world's top neurosurgeons, and his life is now in her hands. So tell me, who doesn't belong here now? The steady hum of announcements echoed through the vast space of the VIP check-in area. Floor-to-ceiling glass reflected the polished elite. Business tycoons, politicians, celebrities, all draped in perfection. Tailored suits, designer evenings, gowns, gleaming watches that caught the light with every calculated movement. Amidst the luxury, Lisa Carter appeared. She didn't draw attention, not because she was trying to hide, simply because she didn't belong here. Dark blue jeans, a thin gray cardigan draped over her shoulders, white sneakers worn with time, a deep brown leather bag slung over one shoulder, the edges of the strap slightly faded. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around her face, her eyes sharp, perceptive, but uninterested in seeking approval from anyone. Lisa didn't glance around, didn't appear lost, yet in a place like this, she was a quiet note in a symphony of arrogance, and that made her stand out. Jonathan Miller stood near the VIP check-in counter, a Starbucks cup in one hand, his phone in the other, scrolling through work emails with a self-satisfied smirk. Armani suit, Rolex watch, Italian leather, shoes. The unmistakable air of a man who believed he belonged at the top of the social pyramid. He was speaking loudly to a business partner, discussing a multi-million-dollar investment deal as casually as if he were talking about grocery shopping. "You heard for use, told you. If they won't take the offer, let them go bankrupt. We're not a charity." His voice was firm, edged with the confidence of someone accustomed to giving orders. Lisa stepped up to the first-class check-in counter. She paid no mind to the eyes on her, but they were watching. Some assessed her from head to toe. Others glanced at her simple clothing, then back at their designer luggage, their expressions marked with quiet skepticism. Who was she? An assistant? A service worker? Or worse, someone who had wandered in by mistake? Jonathan caught sight of her through the reflection in the glass. His brow creased slightly. His gaze swept over her, lingering for a second on her worn leather bag before shifting to her composed face. And then, something clicked in his mind. He turned, stepped forward, and casually held out a hand to block her path. A smirk played at his lips. "Sorry, you're in the wrong place. This is first-class check-in." Lisa stopped. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She simply lifted her gaze to him. There was no anger in her eyes, no challenge, no need to argue. Just assessment. Jonathan waited for a reaction. Maybe embarrassment. Maybe hesitation. Maybe even a soft apology before she quietly stepped back. But none came. Lisa said nothing. She simply reached into her bag, pulled out a ticket, and placed it firmly on the counter. The check-in agent, a middle-aged woman in a crisp uniform, glanced at the ticket, then immediately shifted into professional mode. "Good evening, ma'am. May I see your passport?" Jonathan hesitated for a fraction of a second. He didn't say anything, but a question formed in his mind. How? No way. Was she someone's personal assistant? Did she get upgraded by mistake? Or was this some kind of system error? Before he could piece together an explanation, Lisa took back her ticket and walked past him as if he didn't exist. No response. No second glance. Just absolute indifference. A few passengers chuckled. A woman murmured to her husband, "Who is She? Someone's private staff? Jonathan folded his arms across his chest, his smirk hardening. He wasn't used to being ignored. The airplane's engines hummed softly, a steady rhythm beneath the quiet luxury of first class. Each passenger was immersed in indulgence. A middle-aged man flipping through a financial newspaper, a female executive adjusting the stem of her expensive wine glass, a famous actress in dark sunglasses reclining with a cocktail in hand. Lisa stepped into the cabin, her eyes scanning the seat numbers. Then she stopped. Seat 3A, right next to Jonathan Miller. Lisa's expression didn't change, but Jonathan's did. He had just taken a sip of wine when he spotted her standing there. One perfectly groomed eyebrow lifted slightly. He smirked, not in amusement, but in assessment. As Lisa reached for her seat, Jonathan set down his glass, tilting his head toward her. "You do realize this isn't a coffee shop, right?" His voice was loud enough for those nearby to hear. Lisa didn't respond. She simply pulled out her seat, sat down, and placed her bag neatly beside her. No hesitation. No irritation. Jonathan straightened, resting an elbow on the armrest, eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to solve a puzzle. First class is getting more accessible these days. A businessman nearby let out a quiet chuckle. A woman stole a glance at Lisa before turning to whisper something to her husband. Lisa remained unmoved. Calmly, she reached into her bag and pulled out a thick book. Not a novel, not a fashion magazine, but a dense medical textbook, its pages packed with complex terminology. Jonathan's gaze flickered to the cover, his brow arching just slightly. Lisa opened the book, turned a page. The perfect dismissal. And that irked him. I'd love to know what kind of job lets you read books like that in first class. This time, his voice carried a sharper edge. She didn't belong here. And yet, Lisa still didn't answer. She kept reading, unbothered, unshaken. Jonathan's patience wore thin. Swirling his wine glass absently, he suddenly leaned over, deliberately glancing at the pages in her hands. Oh, economics? Or is it a guide on getting rich quick? A few passengers chuckled under their breath, and for the first time, Lisa reacted. She closed her book. Slowly. Jonathan leaned back, expecting a retort. But Lisa said nothing. She simply set the book down on the table, then turned to him. Her gaze met his. Just for 2 seconds. Not angry. Not offended. Not even annoyed. Just looking. And for the first time, something in Jonathan hesitated. Because that wasn't the look of someone out of place. It wasn't timid. It wasn't defensive. It was the look of someone assessing him, like she could see straight through the polished arrogance, like she had touched something beneath it, something even he hadn't acknowledged. Then Lisa smiled. A small, knowing smile. Not polite. Not amused. A smile that had already seen the ending. And without a word, she picked up her book and resumed reading. Jonathan felt something tighten in his throat. No one had ever made him feel scrutinized like that, especially not someone like her. He opened his mouth to say something. Anything. But at that moment, Chief Flight Attendant Olivia Martinez stepped forward. Outside, the sky stretched endlessly, a deep, unbroken blue. Wisps of white clouds drifted like silent sails. Inside the first-class cabin, the atmosphere was entirely different. Lisa Carter sat unmoved, calm, turning the pages of her book. She was used to judgmental stares, but this time, they didn't come from just one person. They came from an entire cabin. a small, exclusive world of people who believed they belonged to society's elite. And in their eyes, Lisa did not belong here. Jonathan had been watching her for an hour. She hadn't reacted to his remarks, hadn't argued, hadn't defended herself. And that unsettled him more than anything. Leaning back, he poured himself another glass of wine, then turned to the man seated across from him, an older businessman in a perfectly tailored gray suit, his sharp gaze carrying the weight of someone long accustomed to power. Just closed on an $18 million estate in Los Angeles, oceanfront. No one else could have gotten a deal like that. The businessman nodded approvingly. Smart investment. You must have a sharp eye. Jonathan smirked, lifting his glass as if the statement were obvious. Lisa turned a page. No glance, no flicker of emotion, and that made Jonathan even more determined to test her. The businessman shifted his gaze toward Lisa, curiosity flickering in his expression. What do you do for a living? Someone buy you this first-class ticket? A casual remark? Or was it intentional? Jonathan smirked, waiting. Lisa paused, her fingertip rested on the page, as if marking the last line before she looked up. Then she smiled. Just slightly. I work in a field where I help people through life-threatening situations. A flawless response. Unquestionable. Undeniable. And yet, it revealed nothing. Jonathan raised an eyebrow, chuckling. Let me guess, an online wellness coach? This time, several passengers chuckled along. A woman glanced at Lisa, her expression skeptical, as if assessing whether she was worth believing. But Lisa didn't react. She simply took a sip of water, then turned another. Page, Jonathan frowned. She hadn't denied it, hadn't confirmed it. She had left them all guessing, and that irritated him. A flight attendant approached, carrying a tray of fine wine. Would you care for a glass of Chateau Margaux 2005? Lisa looked up and shook her head gently. I don't drink while I'm working. This time, Jonathan laughed outright. Working? On a plane? He set his glass down, leaning forward slightly. I'd love to know what kind of job lets you. Read books that thick in first class. His tone was taunting. Around them, passengers began to pay closer attention. Some smirked, nodding along. Others remained quiet, simply observing. Lisa smiled, not because she found Jonathan amusing, not because she was insulted, but because she had seen this before. Calmly, she picked up a pen, jotted something down in the margin of her book, then resumed reading. Jonathan felt his irritation rise. She didn't argue. She didn't explain herself. She simply didn't care. And that, more than anything, unsettled him. Whispers spread through the cabin. Who was she? Why wasn't she reacting? Jonathan's grip tightened around his glass. For the first time in his life, he felt dismissed by someone he had deemed unworthy the moment. He saw her. Lisa didn't win with words. She won with absolute indifference. The first-class cabin buzzed with quiet conversations, the soft clinking of crystal glasses, and the rich aroma of gourmet meals being served. Jonathan Miller sat back, satisfied. He believed he had won. Lisa Carter remained composed, silent as ever, but he was certain she wouldn't be able to ignore him forever. And yet, something was wrong. Lifting his glass for another sip, Jonathan felt a slight tremor in his hand. His brow furrowed as a strange numbness crawled down his left arm, tingling at his fingertips. No, that's not possible. He flexed his fingers, but they no longer felt like his own. Then came the pain. Sudden, crushing. His chest tightened. His fingers dug into his shirt, clutching at his heart as the wine glass slipped from his trembling grasp. It shattered against the floor. Deep red liquid bled across the plush carpet like splatters of blood. Heads turned. Jonathan tried to inhale, but his breath came in sharp, labored gasps. His lungs felt like they were collapsing. A panicked voice rose from a nearby seat. "What's happening to him? Get a flight attendant." Jonathan tried to speak, but the only sound that escaped was a garbled, distorted murmur. A flight attendant rushed over, kneeling beside him, eyes wide with concern. "Sir, can you hear me? Can you move your hand?" Jonathan stared at her, unable to respond. The left side of his face began to droop. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances, whispering in hushed voices. Someone fumbled for their phone, frantically searching Google for stroke symptoms. The air in the cabin grew thick with tension. Some passengers stood, their movements frantic. Others edged away, as if afraid his condition might somehow be contagious. Jonathan slumped back against his seat, panic flooding his eyes. He had never felt so powerless. A man across the aisle urgently waved to the lead flight attendant. "He needs a doctor. Somebody get a doctor." Chief Flight Attendant Olivia Martinez appeared. 15 years in the airline industry, and she had never grown accustomed to moments like this. She didn't scream. She knew panic would only make things worse. But the look in her eyes, sharp, assessing, said it all. This was serious. Turning to scan the cabin, she kept her voice steady, though the urgency bled through. "We need someone with medical training. Is there a doctor on board?" Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Jonathan's gaze darted around the cabin, his breath coming in shallow, ragged pulls. For the first time in his life, money, power, confidence, none of it mattered. He was losing control, and he was about to die. The hushed murmurs of first class had vanished. All eyes were on Jonathan Miller, slumped in his seat, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. Chief Flight Attendant Olivia Martinez scanned the cabin, her voice urgent yet controlled. "Is there anyone with medical training?" Jonathan gasped for air, his lips trembling as he struggled to form words. Only garbled sounds came out. The left side of his face sagged visibly. Panic spread like wildfire. Some passengers instinctively backed away, as if his condition were contagious. A flight attendant rushed off to grab the first aid kit. A woman frantically tapped at her phone, but there was no signal. No one moved to help. No one knew what to do. A man was dying. Lisa placed her book down, firm, decisive. Then she stood. Without hesitation, she strode toward Jonathan. "I'm a doctor." Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It carried the weight of certainty. The passengers froze. "Her?" a woman gasped. "She's joking, right?" Another scoffed. Lisa ignored them. She had seen countless patients on the brink of death. She had stood at the edge of life and loss. There was no time for explanations, no time for indignation, only time to save a life. Olivia hesitated for half a second, but when she met Lisa's sharp, unwavering gaze, she immediately stepped aside. "What do you need?" Lisa didn't answer right away. She knelt beside Jonathan, fingers pressing against his carotid artery. Weak pulse. Shallow breaths. His eyes were distant, but there was still awareness in them. She tilted his head slightly, studying his face. When she touched his left arm, there was barely any response. She knew instantly. Stroke. "We don't have much time." A passenger whispered nearby. She really is a doctor? A man frowned. No way. I thought she was someone's assistant. Lisa didn't react, didn't even acknowledge them. She leaned in, her voice steady, deliberate. Can you hear me? I'm going to help you, but you need to breathe. Stay with me. Jonathan's eyes locked onto hers, sheer terror reflected in them. For the first time in his life, he had no control. Lisa turned to Olivia. I need the first aid kit. Do you have aspirin or blood thinners? Olivia nodded, signaling a flight. Attendant to move quickly. Lisa shifted her focus to another crew member, her tone calm but absolute. Contact emergency services on the ground. We may need to prepare for an emergency landing. A man exhaled sharply. She's running the entire situation. Lisa turned back to Jonathan, her gaze unwavering. You're going to be okay. I won't let you die on this flight. She gently tilted his chin up, ensuring his airway stayed open. The surrounding passengers couldn't look away. A woman whispered to her husband, Look at her. She's not even flustered. Another swallowed hard. She really is a doctor. But Lisa didn't hear them, because in this moment, nothing else mattered. Not the stares, not the judgment, not wealth, not status, only life and death. And Lisa Carter had sworn an oath to life. Jonathan's gaze lingered on her, something shifting in his eyes. The doubt was gone, because now he knew she was his only hope. The air in first class had frozen, thick with tension. Lisa remained kneeling beside Jonathan, her focus razor-sharp, every sense locked onto the man struggling for his life. Jonathan Miller was still conscious, but barely. He tried to move, but his left arm refused to respond. His own body was betraying him. Standing nearby, Olivia Martinez fought to keep her composure, but urgency cracked through her voice. How bad is it? Lisa didn't look up. 2 fingers stayed pressed against Jonathan's carotid artery, feeling the weak, erratic pulse beneath her touch. Bad. His heart rate is unstable. High risk of a blood clot forming. A passenger covered her mouth, whispering to her husband, in fear. It really is a stroke? Lisa had no time to explain. She met Olivia's eyes, her voice firm. I need aspirin. A blood thinner. Now. Olivia didn't hesitate. She turned to a nearby flight attendant. Get the first aid kit. Hurry! The attendant ran, but time wasn't on their side. Lisa looked down at Jonathan. His breathing had grown more erratic. No, she needed to act. Now! Her eyes swept across the cabin. Does anyone have blood thinners? Aspirin? The passengers startled, caught off guard. A middle-aged woman, a business executive judging by her sharp blazer, fumbled through her purse before pulling out a blister pack. I have aspirin, but it's just the kind I take for headaches. That's fine. Give it to me. Lisa took the pill, swiftly breaking it in half for easier absorption. She turned back to Olivia. We need to get this into his system immediately. Olivia nodded, steadying Jonathan's head as Lisa leaned in. Her voice was calm, measured. Jonathan, I need you to cooperate. Hold this under your tongue. It'll help keep your blood flowing. Jonathan's lips quivered. His attempt to speak was nothing more than a distorted murmur. Lisa didn't hesitate. She placed the pill under his tongue, gently supporting his chin to keep it in place. Don't swallow. Let it dissolve, a passenger murmured under his breath. She knows exactly what she's doing. The flight attendant rushed back with the first aid kit. Lisa flipped open the case, her hands moving without a second of doubt. There, a vial of heparin, a stronger anticoagulant than aspirin. She uncapped the syringe, drawing the exact dosage with steady precision. Not a moment of hesitation. "Olivia, I'm administering the heparin. Keep him steady." Olivia placed a reassuring hand on Jonathan's shoulder. "We've got you. Just hold on." Jonathan's eyes fluttered, weak but aware. Lisa found the vein in his arm, her movements swift, exact. Then she injected the medication. The cabin fell silent. The seconds stretched. Lisa watched the clock, counting every beat. 3 minutes passed. Then Jonathan's eyelids flickered, his breathing slowed, the tremors in his body faded. Lisa pressed her fingers against his pulse once more. Stronger, more stable. She had saved him. A hushed voice broke the silence. "She's not just any doctor." A man frowned, shaking his head in disbelief. "I thought she was just someone who got upgraded." Lisa didn't care. Her focus remained on her patient. Jonathan's eyes opened, heavy, groggy, but no longer vacant. His voice was a hoarse whisper. You're a doctor?" Lisa met his gaze. 1 second. 2, then she nodded. Jonathan drew in a slow, deep breath. No more suffocating pressure, no more darkness swallowing his consciousness, but his body felt impossibly heavy, like he had been crushed under an invisible weight. He blinked, awareness creeping back in piece by piece, and the first thing he saw was Lisa. She sat across from him, calm yet piercingly sharp, as if she had already foreseen how this would unfold. Jonathan swallowed. His throat was raw. Flashes of the stroke surged back like a tidal wave. The pain, the helplessness, the sheer terror of realizing that money and power couldn't save him. And then, the woman he had mocked, dismissed, had been the only one who could. Something unfamiliar twisted in his chest. A feeling he had never known. Shame. Humiliation. Jonathan Miller had never bowed his head to anyone. But this time, You're a doctor?" His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper, as if even he couldn't believe the words leaving his mouth. Lisa didn't answer right away. She simply held his gaze, steady, unshaken. Then, slowly, she spoke. Each word cut deep. "I'm Lisa, a neurosurgeon." The first-class cabin erupted. A passenger's coffee cup slipped from their grasp, clattering onto the tray table. A woman gasped, covering her mouth with trembling fingers. No one could speak. Jonathan couldn't move. His eyes were locked onto Lisa. A doctor? No. Impossible. A distinguished older businessman stiffened in his seat. Then, as if struck by sudden realization, his eyes widened. "Wait, Lisa Carter?" Another passenger whipped around, their face etched in shock. "Dr. Lisa Carter from New York Medical Center?" The energy in the cabin shifted. A young woman inhaled sharply, her voice shaking with disbelief. "I read about her. In Time magazine. She's the genius doctor who saved thousands of lives." A businessman gaped. "She's the one who performed the first robotic brain surgery in the U.S. Whispers rippled through the cabin like wildfire. The same people who had sneered at Lisa only moments ago now stared at her in a different light. Jonathan felt his chest grow heavy. That smug sense of superiority, the arrogance he had worn like armor, shattered. He had never considered the possibility of being wrong. But this wasn't just a mistake. He had misjudged someone he had no right to judge. Jonathan forced himself to speak. "Why?" Lisa looked at him. Jonathan swallowed, hard, regret thick in his voice. "Why did you save me? After everything I said." Lisa tilted her head slightly, then smiled. Not a victorious smile. Not a mocking one. Just the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. Then, without hesitation, she answered, "Because I'm a doctor." Jonathan lowered his head. For the first time in his life, he felt small. For the first time in his life, he understood that a person couldn't be measured by appearances. For the first time in his life, Jonathan Miller knew humility. The plane trembled slightly as its wheels met the runway. A soft chime echoed through the cabin, signaling that the flight from New York had landed safely at Los Angeles International Airport. But inside first class, no one rushed to grab their luggage. No one resumed their conversations about million-dollar deals or lavish vacations. The air remained heavy with silence. Everyone was still haunted by what had happened on this flight. Jonathan sat back in his seat, staring blankly ahead. The stroke had passed, but it had left behind something far deeper than physical weakness. Not just the reminder of mortality, but the weight of his own ego. He was no longer the same man who had boarded in New York with self-assured arrogance. Now, he was simply a man who had been saved by the very person he had dismissed. And that was a pain far worse than any stroke. Lisa quietly gathered her belongings, unhurried, unaffected, unconcerned with recognition. She had saved a life, but she wasn't waiting for applause. She had simply done what her oath demanded of her. Jonathan looked at her, then lowered his gaze. A heavy silence hung between them, and then, for the first time in his life, Jonathan Miller bowed his head. "Thank you." His voice was rough, subdued. All the arrogance was gone. I was wrong." Simple words, but they carried the weight of an awakening. Jonathan had never imagined himself saying them, but now he knew. It was the only thing he could say. Lisa tilted, her head slightly, as if considering something. Then she gave a small, knowing smile. "Next time, before you judge someone by how they look, think about what they might be capable of doing for the world." Jonathan lifted his gaze, eyes filled. With reflection, she wasn't scolding him. She wasn't gloating. She was simply leaving him with a lesson, one he would never forget. Lisa slung her bag over her shoulder and walked away, her steps steady, unwavering. Jonathan remained seated, watching as she disappeared into the crowd. Around him, a few other passengers sat in quiet contemplation. The same people who had once sneered at Lisa were now lost in their own thoughts. They had been wrong. They had all been wrong. Lisa walked away, her posture steady, her stride unwavering, just as it had been from the very start. No hesitation, no turning back, no need for recognition. The airport lights cast sharp reflections against her face, strong, resolute. She had just lived through one of the most intense moments of the flight. Yet there was no trace of turmoil within her. She had done what needed to be done. And now, she simply moved forward. Because she didn't need anyone to know who she was to be. Who she was. Behind her, Jonathan remained seated. For the first time, he wasn't rushing to deplane. He wasn't checking emails or making urgent calls to his assistant. He just sat there, watching her go, his expression unreadable. His mind felt empty. Not from the after effects of the stroke, but because, for the first time, he didn't know how to face himself. Lisa's words echoed in his head. Next time, before you judge someone by their appearance, think about what they might be capable of doing for the world. A simple statement, but it shattered the very foundation Jonathan Miller had built his life upon for 45 years. And it wasn't just Jonathan. The passengers who had once scoffed at Lisa sat quietly, exchanging uneasy glances. Some lowered their heads as if ashamed of their own thoughts. An older man murmured to his wife, "I've never seen anyone so composed. After everything she went through." A young woman pulled out her phone, quickly searching Lisa Carter's name. Seconds later, she pressed her lips together, whispering to her companion, "She's an award-winning neurosurgeon. I can't believe." We looked at her like she didn't belong here. No one needed to say it aloud. But first class had just learned a lesson, one no expensive ticket could ever buy. Jonathan felt something unfamiliar stir inside him. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the center of the world. The arrogance, the control, the certainty that he held all the power. Gone. He was just a man who had been lucky to be saved by someone he had never been worthy of judging. Jonathan exhaled slowly, lowering his head. Maybe, for the first time, he was seeing the world the way he should have all along. Lisa disappeared into the crowd, blending effortlessly, vanishing as if she had never been noticed, never been judged, never been dismissed. She didn't need applause. She just needed to keep doing what was right. The camera lingered on Jonathan's face. In his eyes, something had shifted. A change no one could see just yet. But it had begun, and it would never fade. Lisa's voice lingered in his mind. One final reminder. Try not to become a person of success, but rather try to become a person of value. Albert Einstein. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you look? Today's story isn't just about Lisa or Jonathan. It's about all of us. Those who have been misunderstood, misjudged, or overlooked simply because we didn't look the way someone expected us to. But true worth isn't measured by the clothes you wear or the ticket in your hand. It's defined by what you can do to change the world. If you believe that a person should never be judged by appearances, share your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you found this lesson meaningful, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another inspiring story. Remember, success doesn't make you great. Your value does.